Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, viewers of My Media Prime Television, and thanks for accepting to watch this other edition of your program, 90 Minutes in Africa. My name is BOH Elvis at the microphone, and we are broadcasting from Yaoundé. Today, my guest on 90 Minutes in Africa is Father Tatah Mbuy, who is a Catholic priest of the Archdiocese of Bamenda, ordained by Pope St. John Paul II. He is an anthropologist, a member of the World Council of Urgent Anthropologists, member of the Pan-African Association of Anthropologists, and also founding member of the Cabri Research Center Bamenda, and Secretary General of the Nsah History Society. Father Tatah Mbuy is also a master in bioethical sciences. He is equally trained in communication sciences and works at the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon in the Episcopal Commission for Communication. He has so far published 22 books, mostly in the area of cultural anthropology. In today's edition of the program, 90 Minutes in Africa with Father Tatah Mbuy, we are going to be taking a look at the role of the church in Africa. Father Tatah Mbuy, thank you so much for accepting to grant this interview to 90 Minutes in Africa.
The pleasure is always mine for anything that goes with the church and with Africa, and anything that is for communication.
So how is work at the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon? How is the communication commission faring?
I say it's challenging but worthwhile. It's looking as if we're still at the nascent stage, but we had already reached top and fell right down, and we're bouncing back. So it's a very challenging phase of the work that we're in. That's when you have to put in all your initiative, every capacity that you have, in order to build from nothing to something.
Okay, before we talk about the role of the church in Africa, we would like you to react to some latest developments. As you know, Pope Francis sent a message of condolence and asked the world to pray for Cameroon following the kidnap of priests, at least 5, and a religious sister, Reverend Sister. So how is the church coping with this situation?
It's a very, I must say, embarrassing situation. On the 16th, Friday, the 16th of September, about 30 gunmen, as yet unidentified, came into Nsah. Nsah is a few kilometers from Mbuy town, and arrested, kidnapped 5 of the priests who were there, plus a Reverend Sister, the catechist, and 2 other women. So in all 9. And on moving away, they torched the church, and everything burned down except the Blessed Sacrament and the crucifix, to show them God is in charge anyway. But since they left, nobody identifies who they are, and the bishop has not been able to get them release the priests. In Kumbo, a week after that, one priest, Father Cedrick Shintum, from the Kwasi parish of Vekovi, was also kidnapped. In his case, the people who kidnapped him are identified. That the Amber Boys who say that he actually that he is suspected for having shown their general to the military who caught him. That's what they are accusing Father for. But there is no proof. Now, this kind of approach tells you that the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest, which should never have been in the first place, is taking on a very wrong approach in conflict management. Those who know conflict know that you do not touch the person who could help you resolve your problem. If you go for the person who in the end will help you resolve your problem and who has the capacity to resolve your problem, you are shooting yourself in the foot. Because the church at the moment, and I can say that without any fear of challenge, the Catholic Church in particular, but the churches in all, have the unique moral force to help resolve the problem, the armed conflict in the northwest and southwest.
And probably, Father, if the church has not done so far, maybe we are not, of course we condemn the kidnap or the arrest of anyone so far, but if the church has not been doing something, maybe this could be a call for the church to intervene through this kind of action.
Not done anything, I beg to differ. Because right from the beginning, in 2016, the bishops of the Bamenda Ecclesiastical Province were the first in Cameroon to write out a well-documented letter. It was an open letter to the President of the Republic. It was very well documented. It's still there in French and English. telling the president how this problem began, why it is going on, how it should be approached, and what could help to resolve it while it was still at that initial stage. Deaf ears were given to it. Instead, the bishops were brought to court and humiliated, and things are from there taken on the wrong turn. Not only that, the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon has written on 3 occasions, and each time everything has happened in the Bamenda Ecclesiastical Province, one or all the bishops have written to express the disgust and the disappointment of the church in people who take up to violence. The church has never and will never take one side against the other. I suppose that's where the problem is that many people think the church should be either this way or this way. The church can never take that. Let me just explain to you. The church has one role, and the role of the church is, where does the truth lie? Wherever the truth lies, it doesn't matter who you are, the church will proclaim that truth, will find out that truth, and will investigate that truth and show you what it is. It may hurt, but that's where the church stands. What is the truth?
I've heard what you said about concerning what the church has done, about the letter, of course, which I read. But many people have the impression that that letter is just simply theoretical. People are expecting a more practical action from the church. For instance, refusing Holy Communion to most of those that are involved in the conflict who don't want to resolve it.
The church doesn't have that right to refuse communion from anyone except where it is publicly known. Because you cannot, remember that both the aggressor and the aggressed, on both sides, they're all Christians. And the role of the church is to evangelize all of them. The aggressor as well as the aggressed. The one who is oppressing and the one who is being oppressed. They are all children of God, and the role of the church is that of mother and teacher, mater et magistra. As mother, you do not, when you come as a mother, your children are fighting, you start siding with one against the other. You try to bring them together for a reconciliation. You do not come as a teacher and take on one side without showing where the truth is. So the church as a teacher out to show this is the truth. The church as mother shows that truth in love. That's the role of the church.
Maybe the suggestion of refusal of Holy Communion was a little bit extreme, but what I'm trying to say,
the church would have also marched.
I've
heard that the church did do that in Bamenda, and many people joined. It was not reported, but the church did that at the initial stage. All the churches, Baptist, Presbyterian, Catholic, when the bishops were brought to court, it was a march. But that notwithstanding, again, as I say, look at the church this way. At no time would the church be party to violence. At no time. At no time. The church has a fundamental option for the poor, the marginalized, and those who are nobodies. That's the role of the church. But the church could never take on to trying to get one person against the other. The church cannot do that, because the work of the church is to mediate. And you must also understand that when it came to, as in Congo, the bishops and all that came out in violence, that was because that in the case of Congo, it was very clear that this is what is happening against this. In the case of Cameroon, it's very difficult to know where we all stand. And therefore, the church has got to play the role of a pacifier, a role of justice and peace.
Let me give another example. If the church, because I still consider that the fact that the church just wrote a letter to condemn the situation, to me, might not really be enough.
I will tell you what I did, because I was part of it. If you have schools going on in the Northwest, I was part of the fact of actually sitting down with the boys, with the Amber boys. So they cursed me for almost 2 hours and telling them we cannot continue like this. Let us, if you are looking for quality education, at least I can guarantee quality education for Catholic schools. And those, they accepted to give quality education. And that's why our schools are running on perfectly well in the Northwest. At least Northwest and Southwest, the schools are going on, the Catholic schools. Now, you couldn't, and many people may ask, why didn't you talk for others? I cannot talk for somebody else. I talk about what I know I can give, okay? So it wasn't just a question of talk. I also know that many bishops and priests have been able to talk to both government and military. and the Amber Boys, they have been able to, even to approach people from abroad. The church has done that. It's so that we don't make too much noise. If we were to sit down and right now, at the moment trying to put together what the churches have done in this armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest, and you will realize that the accusation on the churches, be it Catholic, Presbyterian, or Baptist, that it is unfounded. A lot has been done. And even the Muslims, one of the greatest activists who is now being arrested was Muslim, and he's one of those who will stand and talk open and straightforward talk.
So is it possible that the church can put pressure on officials, I mean from both sides, to come to the dialogue table? That is, the Episcopal Conference, the bishops come together and book an audience with the President of the Republic. If the President of the Republic does not want to listen to the bishop, is it possible that they could invite the Pope, or the Pope will invite the President of the Republic, since he is a Catholic, you know that he is a fervent Catholic, and tell him to resolve the matter? All this have been done. Pope Francis already called on Cameroon, specifically in April of 2019, to call for an immediate ceasefire. That was not done. Pope Francis did that. In 2020, he repeated. A few weeks ago, the Pope again mentioned Cameroon about the kidnapping of these fathers. It's as high as the church could do. But the church hasn't got a military to force somebody. You can't force somebody to sit down and talk. But we know the diplomatic power. There's the diplomatic power of the Catholic Church. This is where many people make error. You can only discuss with a person who is ready for a discussion. No matter how good you are and what you have, you can't discuss with somebody who is not ready for a discussion. Now, the armed conflict in the Northwest and Southwest has taken on such a dimension that it is no longer just what you and I are seeing. It has become what the French call l'économie de la guerre. It is now war economy. It is about money. And usually when money is concerned, it's very difficult to detach a person from his source of income, even if that source is human blood. You know, it's very, very difficult. I want us to be very clear about this, that the church is doing everything possible within its power to change this situation. But how can I force somebody who is not ready to talk? How can you force somebody like that? Can Natumi try to, you were party to it, can Natumi try to bring together all the Anglophones? Was he given the chance? Did he have the opportunity? So when you look at all of this, you begin to realize, what else could the church do? We don't have guns to take, and we will never take up guns. And the church will never support violence. But we've done all that can be humanly possible done. The Archbishop of Bamenda is a peace crusader all over, talking to both Amber Boys and military and government and diplomats. He talks what he lives. Yet, you cannot force anybody to do what they don't want to. I mean, the situation in Cameroon, this conflict, has reached such a point that conflict managers and those who know conflict management see that it's just on the wrong side of conflict management. So if the church is unable to... It's not that the church is unable. You are saying the church, the people who are involved have not sufficiently realized that in fact all of us should sit and talk about our country. Now, if all the church can do is appeal. I can have the truth and appeal to you, this is the truth. I can tell you this is called a human being. You decide to call it a tree, that's your problem. It's no longer the problem of the church. The truth is never forced. The truth is proposed. That's as much as, and all of us have an intellect. That's where you should, where our error, and you may be right there, is accuse us of having not formed consciences enough to be able to understand where peace is, what that peace is right, and to obey. Remember, a good number of these Amber Boys are sometimes ex-mass servants. A number of the military people and government officials are Christians and Catholics. So if at that level you are not able to get people to respect their consciences, what else can you do? You can't do more than that. So at what point in time, when the church sits back, don't they do a kind of introspection to understand why they are being attacked? Because we know the kind of respect that the church used to have.
We have.
And at one point in time, if at this particular point in time the church is being attacked, I think the church should be able to sit back and say, probably we have gone wrong. We are not being attacked for nothing.
Okay. We have done the analysis to find out why is it that the church is being attacked. There are basically 4 reasons which people offer. The first is by the Mbuy saying that the church is not clearly taking side with them. The church can never do that. Can never. Church cannot take side with one against the other, except of course the one side is clearly right and the other is clearly wrong. Then the church can go for that. So as far as the Mbus are concerned, there is no way the church will be able to say we are for Mbus. It's not possible. Or for opposition. It's not possible. No church can do that in the world. And no one would expect the church to do that. That's the first thing he's saying. And you cannot convince them against that. Because you know that once you stand against them, it is not, they will think you are no longer for them. The government has accused us of being pro-Mbuy. I am sure now that having seen priests and sisters taken away, that they will rethink. Because most of them always thought that the church was on the side of the Mbus or on the side of opposition. No, the church played her role very well. And we will tell the government, as we will tell the Mbuy boys, you are right here, you are wrong here. That's where the church is. This is justice, and justice should be followed. That's the second thing is, the first one is on both sides accusing the church of not siding with one or the other. The second thing we are saying is that the church has not been militant enough. They're asking for the church to march and to come out maybe everywhere and get everybody done. You cannot do that, because whom are you going to march against? You are provoking a situation which could degenerate into something you can't handle. If it is that the bishops have written letters which have been read everywhere in the churches and everybody has read it and heard. So if people don't respect that, what else could you do? The third thing they are telling us is that we stopped schools, or we joined with the opposition to stop schools, etc. We have rebalanced the school. We are asking the schools to come back, and some of our teachers have even been kidnapped. Priests and religious have been taken away because they asked schools to come. So where do we stand now again with it? A fourth reason which people are telling us is, on the other side, is that we seem to be eating and dining with the enemy. I told you, and who is the enemy, I don't know. By that they mean that the bishops and priests are dining and eating
with the government officials.
And what we are saying and repeatedly saying is that whether it is government or the non-governmental stakeholders, we see each of them as a Christian. Show me anywhere in the Bible where Jesus Christ went outrightly to condemn those who were doing evil or those who were supposedly doing evil.
But sometimes, Father, it is difficult to really...
I'm just trying to let you know that you cannot expect us to say that we should do this. If any minister in Cameroon who is Catholic has a right to the support of the church like any Amazonian.
Probably they will stop funding the church if you condemn maybe the government ministers.
We don't want that money. The church doesn't want money.
How would the church cope?
How would the church cope? The church did not start with these people. The church has been for 2021 years and has gone through more persecutions than we are having now.
Maybe there are some people within the church who want the money.
No, the problem is not about money. Let's be very blunt about it. Let's be very blunt. That's what the mistake many people think. Every Christian, every Catholic Christian, including you, has a right and an obligation to the church, because the church are the people of God. The church is not me, it's not the priests and bishops. Okay? The very ministers you are talking about are church. They're part of the church. And a good number of them are good Catholics. You cannot commit what we call the fallacy of hasty generalization, and because one or two are bad, everybody is bad on both sides. So we have to look at a very careful way in which the church is trying to handle this situation, where you have, I've told you that she operates with one principle, as mother and teacher. Every good mother, and you would accept that, no mother who is normal will come and the two children are quarreling and immediately take sides on the other, especially say, because this one has always given me money, therefore I will support that one. No, the mother tells you this is where you went wrong, this is where you went right. As teacher, the church has the obligation to let us know that we do not resolve violence by violence. We will never resolve anything by violence, and it has never. And if you like to know, the Charter for the United Nations Charter for Human Rights, Universal Charter for Human Rights, which was declared in 1948, is the work of the church. It was when Cardinal Giuseppe Roncalli was a nuncio in Paris that he actually drafted what was given to the French jurist René Cassin, who then submitted to the United Nations. That's the history. People talk without understanding that the church has been right at the beginning of all that holds the world today. And our civilization is Greco-Roman, with the church at the basis.
Father Tatah, let's take a look at the church and salvation.
Yeah.
Of course, not only looking at what is happening in Cameroon, but in other conflict areas across Africa, to understand the state of the soul during conflict, the soul of those that are governmental and the souls of those that are non-state armed groups. At this particular point in time, when these armed groups are in conflict, what is the state of their souls?
About the human soul.
About their human soul and the state of their salvation.
About human soul and salvation, nobody can say anything for sure. Because I'll give you 3 examples to contradict what you may be thinking. One of the first people to go to heaven was a thief, nailed on the cross with Jesus. And Jesus told him, tonight you will be with me in paradise. Secondly, one of the greatest apostles of the church was formerly a persecutor, Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, the preacher. Thirdly, Zacchaeus, who was a tax collector and a downright corrupt official. Jesus dined in his house. Today I'm coming to your house. He was on a tree to watch Jesus, and Jesus said, come down, I'm coming to eat with you. Mary of Magdala, many people say, she was a prostitute, etc. But that's it. And Jesus tells us in the gospel, tax collectors and prostitutes are making their way to heaven before some of us. So let us be very careful about how we judge people. About the spiritual link of everybody, be very careful. Man looks at appearances, God looks at the internal. And you and I can never know, no matter whatever science we use, we can never know the state of the internal person. When you talk about the soul and salvation of all we are praying for is beautifully put in a pidgin prayer. God know one bad man will die. Better make a change in life and he stop.
So what is the message to state and non-state armed groups across Africa involved in war, involved in conflict? What can they do to ensure that what they are involved in does not affect their spiritual lives?
4 important things. 1, without God, life is meaningless. Meaningless, absolutely meaningless. If you look at the history of human civilization, we're in the 7th world civilization. Every civilization grew up with religion at the basis. And at any time that any civilization pushed aside religion, that civilization collapsed. You can refer with all the civilizations that have been before us, the Greco-Roman, and you will find that fact. So if you keep religion at the background, you are heading for ruin. You are heading for problems. Secondly, God is truth. The only reason and the only thing that makes a human being different from a brute animal is that he has an intellect, the capacity to know what is right and wrong. Okay? Once you take away, you mortgage your reasoning, you are no better than a goat or a dog. So the object of the intellect is the acquisition of the truth. Once we indulge in something which is not about finding out what the truth is, that project is bound to fail. Because you are not after the truth. We're in the scientific world where every science goes for what is the truth. And the truth is that which cannot not be. The truth is what is. A truth cannot be right today and wrong tomorrow. It is not truth. The third that I would tell them is for us to realize we are passive. Whether you like it or not. Whether you have the greatest power or the greatest money or the greatest whatever, you are passive. We are all pilgrims. We have seen people who were with us yesterday who are no longer here, and ours will not be different. So whether you are the highest person in the land or a non-entity in some obscure village, all of us are pilgrims, and we will go. Let us not forget that we are moving, and we came without anything, we'll go back without anything. Finally, if we must survive, we must realize that you and I, every human being, whether it's raging mad or it's normal, whether it's the richest or the poorest, whether it's the most intelligent, we all share an equality in dignity as persons, because each of us is created in the image and likeness of God. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it or you don't believe in it.
Father Tatah, will God have mercy on protagonists in armed conflict across Africa, even if their quest for justice means shedding blood?
You ask a question which looks to you very simple, but it's very complicated. The name of God is mercy. That's the title of the book by Pope Francis. The name of God is mercy. If God would count our iniquity, nobody will survive. Okay? That's the first, we call it the major premise that we take with God. The second thing is, God is not looking at what you do. God looks at what is in your mind, what is the intention. You know that we normally would talk, even in moral theology, of a justified war, a just war, where you are defending yourself against somebody who is attacking you. You have a right to self-defense because you have a right to your life and an obligation to it. So it depends on what state of mind. I mean, everybody who is involved in war, I suppose at one stage or the other things is defending his right from the other. And that, I think, is the manner in which we should look at them. So it's nothing to be worried about. God takes care of that. And all I can say is, let us not forget, as Africans, the African is notoriously and incurably religious. Once you find an African who doesn't care about religion or God, that is not an African. That is not one. I can say that without fear. If you find anybody, no matter who he is, no matter the status or level of education, an African who does not respect God and for whom religion means nothing is a counterfeit.
And many say that the religion we are practicing has nothing to do with God, because there's a difference between religion and having a relationship with God.
Is it possible to have religion without God and God without religion? If
there is no touch of humanity,
if
there is no touch of humanity in our religion, how does it bring us closer to God?
Humanism and religion. Humanism is the belief that the human being is the end product, that the human being is the measure of all things, and that was already squashed since the early times of the early Greek philosophers, as far back as 300 BC. So that's no longer tenable. Let nobody come up with that. Even humanism in the 17th century, during the age of the Enlightenment, did not work. There is no way, I repeat, quote me anywhere, there is no way you can survive without God. Those who pretend that they are atheists are pretending. Jean-Paul Sartre is one of the greatest atheists, so-called proclaimed atheists. But I'd like to say, and you can cross-check with his biography, Jean-Paul Sartre died in 1980 in Paris in a Catholic hospital. And 2 minutes before he died, the very man who spent his whole life saying that God was nothing, he wrote a big tome like this, a big book like this, Lettres ou le Néant, Being and Nothingness. He screamed from his dying bed, "Oh mon Dieu." Okay? So, it is not possible for you. Even, I have tried to sit down and reason this way. If you are an educated person, it is not possible not to believe in God. What is education? Education means you form the human intellect. The more you form it, the more you discover how much you do not know. And the more you discover that the intellect has got an elastic limit. And when that intellect reaches its elastic limit, it realizes that there is still reality beyond my human intellect. And that's what the German philosopher Immanuel Kant says. You jump into the world of what he calls the categorical imperative, the world where you now submit to a higher intellect called faith. A person who is educated, who does not reach that level, is not yet educated. Therefore, it's not possible to have a real educated person, a genuine intellectual, who is at the same time an atheist. It's not possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us. You're watching 90 Minutes in Africa, coming to you from My Media Prime. You can watch us on Canal Sat, channel 309. You can watch us on MO 17. And if you're on Facebook, you can watch us on My Media Prime Television, like the page, and you can be able to watch us from there. If you're on YouTube, you can watch us on BT Media Group. And if you're in the cable system, you can watch us on digital cable using Swaycom and other relay channels in Africa and Europe. My guest today is Father Tatah Mbuy. Father Tatah Mbuy, we continue with our talk on salvation, the salvation of the soul.
Yes,
now, I was talking about the difference between religiosity and having a relationship with God. Of course, religiosity means to keep on doing mass, celebrating mass, even at the time when people in your doorsteps are dying. And people have the impression that it shouldn't be so.
I beg to differ again. As an anthropologist, no one has been able to give a definition for religion. And every anthropologist will tell you that. You use the word very freely for you, and it seems to mean nothing. But anyone who has done the anthropology of religion will know that it's a very fluid term. But a near definition, or something we could call it a description of what we are calling religion, is the recognition of the supreme in my life and my manifestation of that recognition. That's religion. Now, it is not possible to be a truly religious person and at the same time ignore a human being. It's not possible. That's why Jesus himself tells us on the last day, it's not going to be about how many times you prayed, how many times. Whatever you did to the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did it to me. St. Paul puts it another way. If you say you have faith, but you do not show your good works, your faith is empty. Faith and good works go together. So it is not possible to say, I love God and hate I love God whom I've never seen, and hate the brother or sister whom you see. Because each and every one is the image and likeness of God. If we understood this, it is not possible to have a dichotomy between religion and human action. Unfortunately, very unfortunately, I understand where you are coming from. Some people think and have wrongly, falsely imagined that religion is about going to church, attending mass, praying the rosary, doing this. No, that's part of religiosity, but that is not religion. Religion is holistic. It's recognizing everything in the world, Elvis, including you and I, came into existence by the sheer word of God. Let there be.
But Father,
so we have not come into the world on our own. Let's not begin to fool ourselves. And we cannot expect that each of us can act just as we want it, because you have a right to life as I have a right to life. So your absolute right to do whatever you want is balanced by my absolute right to also do what I want and not to be aggressed by you.
So why then, Father, is the church projecting religiosity, going to church, praying the rosary, as against the gospel of humanity?
Now, okay, let me explain. Again, I don't think I've made myself enough, sufficiently clear enough. I cannot say I like Elvis, but I don't want to meet him. Is that possible? No. I cannot say I love God, but I don't want to go to meet him. I cannot say I love Elvis, but I hate his parents. Elvis will say, if you hate my parents, then I'm not part of you. Okay? So I cannot say I love Jesus Christ, for example. I'm a Christian, but I don't like to hear about Mary and Joseph and whatever.
When you talk about...
No, I'm coming. I cannot say, for example, I love Elvis, but I do not want to go to his Njangi or whatever. Then I don't like him. Now, when we are talking church, church is the mystical body of Christ. We, again, all of us make a mistake. There is a dogmatic constitution which the church produced during the Second Vatican Council. That dogmatic constitution is called Lumen Gentium, and it is the church as the people of God. The church is not an individual. The church is an institution. It are the people of God first. Then as an institution, it is on earth set up like any society and handed to human beings who are weak, including also a pope. Okay? So even if human beings who handle that church are weak, the church can never be weak. That's why Jesus told us, I'm with you till the end of time. So let us stop. Sometimes I feel like telling people and shouting at them, yelling at them and say, stop, because you will never succeed in persecuting the church. You will never. It has never happened in history. We have been 2021 years old, and no human persecution has destroyed the church. In fact, the more the church is persecuted, the stronger it becomes. So I'm just letting you know that the church has been built on the blood of martyrs. And because it's been built on the blood of martyrs, human weaknesses of the church, of certain members of the church notwithstanding, do not make that church bad. You do not say because a bishop, because a pope, because a priest, because a religious has done this, therefore the church has done that. Not only is it a fallacy of hasty generalization, it is a wrong way of looking at the church, because the church are not these people. The church is including you, the very one criticizing what you are calling the church. And that's why I'm saying, if we understood it like this, we would not set up a podium where there are people there and there's the church here. No.
So Father, did Africans know and worship God before the coming of the church?
You are talking to somebody who has written 2 books on the same issue. The first book I wrote is called African Traditional Religion as Anonymous Christianity. And in it, I'm saying exactly that. Even if Christianity had not come to Africa, the Africans would have lived their way of responding to the Supreme in a way in which Jesus wanted. And I can have facts on it. That's number one. Number two, you are talking about before Christianity came. Everything that is good comes from God. And Africans were good even before Christianity came. And Africans who are not Christians are good, will go to heaven. And Muslims who are good will go to heaven. Protestants who are good will go to heaven. Everybody who does good will go to heaven. What is heaven? Heaven is being with God.
Then what about the message of salvation through Jesus Christ who died on the cross?
All of this, all good, cannot come from anywhere else except God, who came into human history in the person of Jesus the Christ.
Why then are we not projecting African traditional religion? Why do we have to import a Western religion?
You will like to know that this man sitting here has been mandated by the Vatican, and we have already produced the book, which will be launched soon, for the teaching of African traditional religion in all seminaries, all houses of formation, and all Catholic universities. Pope John Paul II already said that in Ecclesia in Africa, number 67. So you are perhaps coming long behind, but it's already on. So we are saying that African traditional religion is a religion by its own right, like Christianity is a religion by its own right. You cannot judge one with the parameters or with the categories from another.
So should we therefore be looking forward to using fufu corn and palm wine as bread and wine?
That is now wrong. Now, I'm just
in terms of contextualizing religion.
I've told you that you cannot use the categories of one to judge the other, and you have just done just that, because you are trying to think what we call inculturation. And inculturation, we have not yet, even in many places, I don't think we have anywhere near inculturation. What we have been doing probably has been accommodation, what we call accommodation. That is, you accommodate what you have, or you adapt to what you have. That's adaptation. We've been doing that, but inculturation means I am deeply entrenched into the culture of the people and deeply entrenched into theology, and I bring out the good from here and dialoguing. That is inculturation. What we are doing now is adaptation, and for most of the time, just adopting things which may not even work. You are asking about fufu corn. What are we celebrating? We are doing what Jesus Christ himself did. He did not use fufu corn and palm wine.
Are you sure it's the same? What you guys use is
yes,
exactly what he used?
Exactly the same. Exactly the same. You can cross-check.
Okay. So how can we worship God as Africans without detaching ourselves from our roots? Because we find a situation where, many people who give their life to Jesus and become Christians, at the end of the day, are no longer comfortable with their family members because they no longer attend family meetings. They no longer participate in traditional rites within the family. for fear that these traditional rites are not compatible with their new faith. So what advice do you have to give them?
Three different answers, because what you are saying, I don't know what you understand by church and what you understand by Christianity. At the moment, we have got any number of groups calling themselves churches, and anybody gets up and finds a church. No, I'm talking about here, about the church, which Jesus Christ himself founded at Caesarea Philippi on the authority of Peter. And you can read that very well. Anybody can read it in Matthew chapter 16, verse 13 to 20. You can read that. The church did not just start. That church has historically come to us. It's the one holy Catholic and Apostolic church which Jesus started. Okay? Now, taking that as our starting point, you cannot tell me that somebody would go to that church and be against his people. It's not possible. Because baptism makes you a member of the body of Christ. And there's no way Christ came as a Jew and he lived his own tradition. There are things in tradition which he criticized, and there are things in our own tradition which you yourself will criticize, even if you are not a Christian. Okay? Now, how do people live their Christianity as Africans? The answer was already given in 1969 when Pope St. Paul VI came to Namugongo in Uganda. There was a day when he was actually coming to, after canonizing the 22 martyrs of Uganda. But he said, let these people, Africans, be truly Africans and truly Christian. That's the way of living Christianity. Truly African and truly Christian. What does that mean? You do not have to be a European in order to be African, in order to be a Christian. You do not have to be, by being Christian, lose your Africanity. I'm an Africanist to the core, but I'm a priest of the Catholic Church. And I don't think I do things which are crazy.
So which means that for those, for example, that are from the northwest of Cameroon or other areas across Africa, sometimes when a family member dies, for example, those who lose their parents, sometimes they are asked to sacrifice a goat. Is the church in favor or against this kind of practice?
That you cannot give a blanket answer, yes or no. The immediate instinct is to say no, they should not. But you have to look at individual cases very, very carefully. What is the meaning of sacrificing that goat? What is the purpose? How does that sacrificing of that goat help the person who has died? The person you are asking to sacrifice, he has already gone one step deeper into faith. He is not just accepting the God of our ancestors. He has gone beyond. He is not just accepting veneration of our ancestors. He has gone beyond to the God of our ancestors. Just like the Jews used to offer sacrifices with goats and all that. When Jesus Christ came, he made a new beginning and eternal one. So if you are a Christian, you have to go one step beyond that. And that means if they have to if Jesus Christ is the ultimate sacrifice, and we are asking those that are being asked to do a sacrifice, for example, if they lose a family member and all of that, if they have to stand against this kind of practice, then they have the whole family to face. No, listen. Again, we usually tackle things wrongly. You don't change either culture, even church law. You don't change it as an individual or by your feelings. There are things in our culture which, without even being Christian or Muslim or whatever religion, which we can say at the moment they are not right. I give a simple example. We used to look on twins as something, an aberration. That was because people did not have enough knowledge of biology. Now with biology, we know how twins are formed, and twins no longer constitute a problem in our tradition. On the contrary, the Manis and the Tanis have become people who are respected. You see how culture has changed. Culture is not something static. It moves, it changes. What you are saying now, we have to all sit as Africans, as members of certain ethnic groups, and ask ourselves, when somebody dies and we are sacrificing a goat or this, what is the purpose? Why are we doing this? We have to reach that point. And that is a job the church is supposed to be doing. No, it's not the church. It's first and foremost you and I as Africans. Why are we doing this? We have to reach a point where we understand. We don't just act from emotions. We act now from conviction and say, why did we do this? Why were we doing this? And if you go back in our history, you will see why our forefathers did that. And understand that, given where they were at that time, they were absolutely right to be doing that. But from where we are, you and I, given what we now know, we cannot continue to go back there. It's the same thing like we used typewriters at that time because we didn't have a computer. Now for you to go and buy a typewriter and spend your time hitting the whole thing, people come and ask you whether you are normal. You yourself understand that there's been an upgrading. Now consider Christianity as an upgrading of African traditional religion, and you'll have no problem.
Now let's talk about African saints.
Yes.
I want you to first of all confirm the number of Christians we have in the Catholic Church so far in Africa. I don't know the number. I didn't do research on that. I don't know whether we have up to how many Christians can we have from the Catholic Church across Africa, for instance?
It's the highest number in the world.
The highest number in the world, but we don't have the highest number of saints. How come we don't seem to have a lot of saints from Africa?
What many people don't understand is that there's so many African saints that people don't even know. You may want to know that of the 264 popes that have been, 3 of them were Africans, and all 3 are saints. It's not every pope that's a saint.
Why then are we not projecting our saints?
I'm coming. You may want to know that there are so many, even in your own family, people who are saints. What you are probably asking for is, why are they not declared saints? And that's another matter altogether. It is a procedure in which the church officially now says, this one is a saint, okay? But there are Africans who are saints and who have not been declared. And that's why we celebrate the Feast of All Saints. Just a little reminder, many people ever know that, for example, one of the people who helped Jesus carry his cross was an African, Simon? Do people ever know that one of the apostles of Christ was an African? Do people know that Felicita and Perpetua, who are great saints, were Africans? Do people ever know that, why are we going so far, that in Sudan, one of the greatest saints in the world today, Saint Josephine Bakita, was an African slave? Do people know that from Congo Kinshasa here, Isidore Baganja is a saint? Do we know that from next door Nigeria, what do you call him, Cyprian Ewane Tamsi, is on the process of the church officially declaring him a saint? Do we know that Baba Simon from the Diocese of Edea, who worked in the north, is at the moment, the church has asked, Vatican has asked that his case for canonization be launched officially? It's ignorance that makes us know.
But Father, I should not be blamed, or the people should not be blamed from. No. You are the ones at the forefront. You are the Reverend Father.
Yes.
I think you should blame your colleagues for not informing the people about their saints.
No.
People are not aware of that.
The priest has a number of things to do. Sometimes, if you go on ignorance that people have, you might never start from somewhere. But there's ignorance for which you can be blamed. And not knowing your African saints is culpable ignorance. That's ignorance for which you should be lashed. Why? At the moment, we have the internet, which is free for anybody. Google African saints and you see the whole plethora of African saints.
They should be included in the litany of saints too,
no,
because the litany of saints is popular.
No, that's a different story now altogether. If you were to, not all Europeans are included in the litany of saints. Not all Italians are in the litany of saints. It's if you go by who
because
is in the litany
it's some
of
sort
saints.
of, some see it as some sort of marginalization of African saints in the litany of saints.
In the litany of saints, there are at least 4 Africans mentioned.
But they are marginalized. They are marginalized.
No, they're in the litany of saints, which is said every time. It's just that people don't know. You see, the problem with many of us is a good number of people claim a certain amount of knowledge which is not there. And sometimes ignorance can be the greatest poverty, because the things we should know, we don't get to know. And the things we shouldn't know, we get to know. But I am now challenging you, after this, Google African saints, and you'll be shocked. Google African saints on the litany of saints. You'll be surprised that you didn't know these were African saints. I've just told you of 22 martyrs of Uganda. They were all martyrs. They were all murdered in Uganda, and Pope, Pope Paul VI came and canonized them. They're known Africans. Here in Bamenda, we are trying to launch the cause for Paul Vedrikov and Bernard Fondam. This is already known. So, what are we talking? We're talking about people you even knew.
So let's talk about the procedure for the canonization of saints.
Yeah.
To understand, you said a while ago during the interview, because some people don't really find the idea of saints to be interesting to them because they consider it as some sort of a prejudgment by humans. I mean, for something that is supposed to be judged only by God. How far can we claim to know someone to proclaim the person a saint when we are not having the eyes of God?
Let me first of all go back to what you have just said, because the first statement you made is wrong. We are trying to judge people. In African traditional religion and in our African culture, not everybody who dies is respected. In our culture, everyone who has died is called the living dead. The living dead means, although they are physically dead, they are now in the world of the spiritual and have an impact still with the living. That's why they are called the living dead. That word was coined by the Kenyan anthropologist John Samuel Mbiti, who died just 2 years ago. Now, in Africa, those who die are in two categories. Those who were good people and those who were bad people. In my language, in Nsah, those who are good are called Ani. Those who were bad people are called Mbuy. They are evil spirits. Okay? And if you go to Laikom, to the Com people, you go to come to your own place, you go to Laikom, you will find that the Com people have two graves for the falls, because every traditional ruler who dies is a potential ancestor. But you can only become an ancestor if you are good. If you think, and any Com person who doubts it can go to Laikom, it's not that. Unfortunately, they might not allow you to go to the Ifem, to where the funds are buried. But if you go there, you will see two lines. Some funds are buried under Jinabo on the right and some on the left. During sacrifice in Com, no fund ever calls the name of those on the left, but they call the names of those on the right. This is their own way of making the saints, canonizing their ancestors, and these are the Avon.
And you understand, Father, you agree with me that sometimes it could be wrong. Those we might consider as very good might end up being the bad, and those we might consider as very bad might end up being the good.
What I wanted you to realize is, even in our culture, we are used to knowing who was a good person and who was a bad person.
But you agree with me that sometimes we can be wrong?
Absolutely. That's why I first told you that the human being looks at the external, God looks at the internal. But I wanted you to realize that the church is not only alone in this. However, I'm coming back to show you that the church is not making any mistake. The church has never declared anybody a devil. The church declares people saints. And what does the church do? When somebody dies, it's not even the church that's starting. They are the people of the place who come and say, this man lives such an exemplary life. We would like to know more about him and put him up as an ideal, as a role model for people. When the people do that, they come to their parish priest. The parish priest puts it to the bishop of the area, and the bishop takes an interest in the man. If the bishop sees that truly this man was really that good as people say, he informs the Vatican about it. And the Vatican sets its own investigation. And when they discover that the man was really good, they call him servant of God, like the founding president of Tanzania, the Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. He is today called the servant of God, because the people of Tanzania came up and insisted that this man lived a very exemplary life. So the church has reached that stage with him. After the ceremony of the servant of God, they do a real thorough scientific investigation of the man's life, where a group is called the devil's advocate. All they're interested in looking at the bad things the man did, and others looking for all the good things. They compare them and they put them together, and if he is more on the good side, that person is now called blessed. like Michael Ewane Tansi is now Blessed Michael Ewane Tansi. Then they do another, and within this time to call him blessed is not just finding out 2 miracles, at least 2 miracles or a miracle must happen. That is, for example, we take Elvis who has suddenly cancer which cannot be cured by any scientific method. And we call on this person and say, truly, if you are now in heaven, heal this Elvis. And he heals. And the man gets well. There's no scientific reason for that, except that we ask this person we want to prove to be. When that incident happens, is reported. And when it confirms what they have known, he's declared blessed. Then they do again another investigation as thorough as the first, looking for again another miracle, because it could have been chance. Means many unions. Okay? Polygamous. Many unions. More than 1 to 1. Okay? When one man marries many women, we technically call that polygyny, not polygamy. When one woman marries many men, we call that polyandry. It is practiced in Asia and Latin America. When you sign, as our people make the mistake and sign in court, and lawyers sign without understanding. When you sign polygamy, listen, Bamenda and the lawyers told me, Father, we are dancing a dangerous dance there, because when the women pick up this, we are in trouble. I said, yes, let them know. You can't refuse knowledge from people. That's why I'm saying this openly, that the women, if you go to court, and your husband is mad enough for 2 of you to sign polygamy, my dear women, the fact is, when he takes a second wife, you are free to take a second husband. That is called polygamy.
So, Father Tatah Mbuy, what then should be the best marital option for Africans?
If you are talking about marriage, marriage is, I repeat, a covenant. It is not a contract. It is not a union. That's why the French have a problem, because there's no French word for covenant. I've tried to look at French technicians and scientists. The word for covenant, a covenant means something I engage in the presence of God. In come, for example, when you want to make this covenant, you tear an animal into 2, a goat into 2, and the covenanting parties pass through it. Meaning, if you break this covenant, let your own blood flow. That is a covenant. Ask in come or in any northwest tribe, and you will see that this is what a covenant means. It is something you are doing before God. You are not doing it before human beings. Okay? So marriage is that covenant before God, and it is God who created marriage, not us. Let's stop fooling ourselves. It's God who made Adam and Eve. It is not you and I who made Adam and Eve. When people start talking as if they are more intelligent than God, it is like you are asking yourself, do these people even understand what they are? I am a product of somebody. Elvis starts his mokum, and you come and want to dance the mokum more than me. No, it is not possible. I started it, I knew what I wanted. God started marriage, he made Adam and Eve, blessed them, and asked them to go and multiply. He made male and female. The Bible is very clear. Male and female, he created them. So this whole thing you are talking in the world, even of this same-sex union, etc., much as we respect the people who have their right to their opinion, they cannot call that marriage. It's not marriage.
But Father,
so I'm coming to the Africa. So let's transpose that now and say that in Africa, we are human beings. And the traditional African completely is one who wants a wife. If we go to analyze from an anthropological point of view why Africans took many wives, yourself, you will not want us to practice that. Because it was a question of the more children you had, the more important you were. The workforce, that the greater a workforce you had. So it was more for getting a workforce and projecting their ego that the men went for more wives and getting children. But if you sat those men down and said, listen, I've met a man who had 50 wives, 50 children, and he didn't know some of his children. Do you think that is responsible? But he has, he walks around and people respect him. He has so many wives, okay? So we must reach a point in life where we stop being passionate and start being rational.
From an anthropological perspective, Father, do we have more men than women or more women than men in Africa? Because that's your domain.
The global picture says that there are more women than men everywhere.
What should happen to the other women?
Because not everybody is meant to marry. That's what you forget.
But everybody has human feelings.
No, that's a completely different matter. You see, marriage is a vocation. Okay? A vocation means the initiative is with God, not with you. It is not you who decide to marry. God calls you and you answer. If in fact you decide to marry, that marriage will not last.
So what then should they do as human beings who, of course, have human feelings like any other human being? What then should they do? Should we hold them accountable for fornication or other sexual, other things that they do?
You are going into a completely different field. I want one thing to be clear. Not everybody can marry. Matthew chapter 19, Jesus says it very clearly. And not everybody will marry. And not everybody should marry. Let's have that very clear. This is a fact of nature. Not everybody can marry. Not everybody is meant to marry. And not everybody will marry.
So that's why I'm asking.
I have made a choice not to marry.
Because you're able to deal with it.
No, wait, hold on. It's not because I hate women. It is because I want to serve humanity. Because that's where it's a whole long chapter you're opening. Love means I make a choice for someone. You want to express that love through another human being whom you take as your wife. So your love is channeled and expressed in this human being. Okay? That's your choice. And that choice is something you make consciously. I consciously decide that I will express my own love directly to the author of love. This does not mean that I don't have natural human feelings for a woman. No, far from it. In fact, in the seminary, if you don't feel for a woman, you will not be ordained. If you are a misogynist, you hate women. Because 90%, if not 75% of those you will be dealing with are women. What here is important is that you and I have lost our sense of responsibility and our sense of dignity and our sense of humanhood, that we are human. It means I have an intellect, and everything I do must be something that is rational. Otherwise, I become just an animal.
So, Father Tatah Mbuy, what do we have to say about this view of the church, which gives the impression that, for example, for the sake of taking a look at the example of priests, for instance, it gives the impression that having been close to women or getting married, in the case of priests, stops us from serving humanity or from serving God.
No.
What does that say about the church?
No. Everybody has, we get things wrong. Eh? The deepest and the first vocation in life is marriage. It's a family. I come from a family. That's in fact perhaps the most difficult vocation. I respect married people more than I would respect my own vocation. Why? Because I can decide to be transferred whenever I feel unwanted anywhere. As a married person, for better or for worse, till death do you part. And you need the grace of God to live in that kind of condition. So I cannot stand on a certain platform and look down on you and think your own is lower than mine. They are vocations from God. That's why I told you it's a call. And if God does not call you and you make a choice, it will flop. So when we are priests, I have taken a call and answered a call, hopefully, to serve God. You have answered a call to serve God through your wife and children. Okay? This is, two of us have vocations. It's unfortunate that when we talk about vocations, people think only about priesthood and religious life and forget the most basic. We are all priests, but we come from families. And if there was no family, there would be no priest.
Father, let's conclude this issue of polygamy before getting into something else.
Yeah.
Now, I know you are doing a lot of research, and I want you to do research on this. I want you to do research on the number of married men in church who are faithful to their wives. You're going to be shocked about the statistics you are going to have. Now, based on that, considering the fact that, because based on my own research, monogamy doesn't seem to be working in the African church. And the church is being pretentious about it, saying that no, it must be like that. Meanwhile, it is not working. What should be the way out? Considering that men are getting married in church under monogamy, but in essence they are practicing polygamy.
You know, the way you are reasoning, the students of logic will tell you that you are committing a fallacy called non sequitur. Because this and this and this is happening, therefore, one, even polygamists, and I can show them to you, who have 6 wives are still chasing others. So it is not the number of wives that is going to solve the problem. So even if we answer to polygamy, we will still have a problem. If you go to monogamy, you still have a problem. And I don't need to go do the research because I know it already. I've been in marriage counseling for over 19 years. And I know that a good number of people, men and women, are not loyal or faithful to their marriage vows. This is a human weakness. St. Paul tells us, each time I want to do good, I find myself doing the evil I do not want to do. And that is why life is a constant struggle against evil. Okay? Life is every day making an option to do good. Is to have a fundamental option which is for God, which recognizes God. And everything else that I do then is out of human weakness. Because of human weakness, we cannot say, because of this weakness, let us then accept this. No. If tomorrow we all feel that we should be killing, should we then legalize killing? No. There are certain things that are absolute and should be absolute. That's why I usually tell married people about the flute of life. A flute is very easy when you look at it. But when you start playing it, you need to learn how to play it to rhyme. Just like a piano. My flute is not just what I'm saying. The F is faith, fidelity. That's the first thing that makes marriage marriage. Fidelity. The L of that flute is love. If you have fidelity and you don't have love, it will not work. Love is a choice that I decide whether you do whatever you do, I will like you. The U of flute is understanding the other person and understanding yourself. 9/10 of people don't understand themselves. Even you may not know who you are because there are parts of your life that are completely out of your understanding. The T is being truthful to yourself. Many of us are not truthful to ourselves. And the E of flute is encouragement. Encourage each other. I was saying that I always tell married couple about the flute. You see, the flute is an instrument which looks at first sight very easy. I was a band boy and we had to spend months learning how to play the Cameroon anthem on the flute. And even now, if they give you, you may see me play it and I take it and say, take it and give it to you to play, and you find it difficult. Same with the piano. The keyboard looks very easy until you start trying to learn it. And my flute is definitely telling married people that marriage is first and foremost built on fidelity, the F of the flute. If you are not faithful, that marriage will not work. L is built on love. Love is a choice. Whatever you do, I will love you. I cannot hate you. You, I have to understand you and understand myself. Many people don't understand themselves, let alone understanding the other person. T of the flute is the truth. Unless marriage is built on truth and trust between husband and wife, suspicion comes in, it breaks. E, we need to encourage each other. That's the fruit of marriage, which is very difficult for a good number of people. So our marriages have to be built on that fruit, and it's a school where nobody graduates from. In marriage, we don't graduate, and there are no teachers, no professors. Everybody is a student, and we learn by doing.
Father Mbuy, let's talk now about the place of African names in Christian baptism. We still find a situation where many people, some Reverend Fathers, insist that Christians should give what they call an English name. I don't know whether a Christian name or an English name to their children before baptism. What is your position on that?
Eric, you want to find in my book on African traditional religion, there's a whole chapter on names. In fact, I don't use my so-called Christian name, Humphrey. I'm very comfortable with
English name.
Yes, I'm very comfortable with Tatah, Mbuy, because they say exactly what I would want. There is no name in no name in any African tribe that doesn't have a meaning. And those meanings are very, very significant. Sometimes they are relating direct to God. Ignorance can sometimes make us do things which we should not do, including even us priests. If I don't know, for example, how would a priest refuse Nsah that somebody should not be baptized formally, but he accepts Dieudonné, which is a French translation of formally? You understand that the problem was ignorance.
That's what I'm saying.
The problem was ignorance, not that he didn't know. Why would somebody come refuse that a child should not be baptized Mbuy, but wants you to baptize the child as Deo Gracias?
Oh, God love.
Why? Why? Because they are the translation of this. We must accept we still have a long way to go. And most of us are not making sufficient effort to understand the culture of the people and to understand the significance of things in people's lives. So we have a long way to still move. And if African traditional religion is having problems the way it's having, curiously, it is not because of Europeans, it's because of us Africans. It is us who are putting the wager. If I play a piano before you people, young people, most of you would feel more at home than if I played the xylophone. So you people are hybrid, and this is where we have problems in Africa. It's not that the things are bad, it's that the real people who are creating the problem are the Africans who are living the life here and now.
Father Tatah, have you noticed, I mean, just like I've done, the fact that anxiety to go to church has somehow reduced in Africa?
Depends on where you are. The statistics from the Vatican show completely the opposite. That Africa has the fastest growing number of Christians in the world.
Maybe Christians with their names in baptism cards. I'm talking about anxiety to go to church on Sunday.
Going to church. I know, for example, that there were parishes where they used to have one mass. Now they are forced to have two. Where there were two masses, where they now have 3 and 4. You just need to go around here in Yaoundé and you see. What you are probably saying is that a very significant minority, I choose my words, a significant minority are not going. That's people who matter, in inverted commas and open, who were normally going to church are not going. Some of these, I put them in 3 categories. Some are those who have gone into the West, have been influenced by the West wrongly, to imagine that religion is the opium of the people, as the Bolsheviks told us in 1917, and they collapsed. They don't realize that secularism, which is in the West, is the undoing of what is happening in the West now. That's the first group of people. And they are a significant number. They belong to a good number of the elite, a good number of intellectuals, so-called intellectuals. Okay? That's why I call a significant minority. The second reason are the young people who seem to learn anything and everything and nothing at all in the end. Young people are too easily bought over, and I'm so sad that when I see the young people today who should be worried about their future, they don't seem to bother. They think everything is summarized on the screen, be it a small or big screen, whether it's on a computer or a mobile or a smartphone, or it is on whatever. That's where they live their life, is virtual existence. And they forget that real life is lived differently. Now the young people, unfortunately, there's so much that has to be done to help our young people. Theirs is more ignorance rather than the issue. A third reason is we have a world where money, power, and wealth seem to be the factors that decide who is who. And so many people are going after money, going after wealth, and after power, rather than God. They forget that, in fact, in our lives, money does not do everything. Property does not help you, and power is nothing. The wealthiest person on planet Earth was Socrates Onassis, a Greek merchant. Until I called his name now, I'm not sure that you knew him. But he's gone. But he had money which could frighten. The most powerful person on earth, not because I'm a priest, is the Pope. There's nobody on earth, no ruler, that has so many people whom he controls like the Pope. Yet 263 popes have died. wealth. You have seen people who had wealth in this country, but they have gone. So this is the foolishness of us. You know, 2 weeks ago, we had a reading in the church, in the Bible, which said, vanity of vanity. All is vanity.
Father Tatah Mbuy, since the church is growing in Africa, as per the statistics coming from the Vatican, of course, you travel to Europe from time to time, and you see that most of the time, those going to church are old people.
Sure.
Should Africa start considering sending missionaries to Europe to preach the gospel to Europe?
They are sending, but many others sent 4 already to Portsmouth, to let you know. And the Diocese of Mbuy sends many. Kumbo has sent at least 10 that I know to America and other countries. So we are already doing it. It's a reality. What you are saying is true. They brought Christianity to us. They have started realizing that their materialism is carrying them backwards. And so they are seeking, again, African missionaries to come and help them. That's probably, I think, what the world is all about. That when you are a mother, when you give birth to children, when you get old, the children come to help you. So I think it's in order.
You've agreed with me that youths seem to be a little bit distracted by happenings, in the world, especially the social media and so on and so forth. How is the church, since we're in the communication department, how is the church adapting its communication strategy to be able to touch the young people where they are? Because if they cannot come to church, maybe the church should get to them where they are, in the comfort of their homes, through the social media.
Wonderful question, because it fits very well with the theme of our 4th Catholic Communication Forum, which we hold in Mbuy. And that forum has as theme, communication, a tool for evangelization. Now, what does the church say? God is the greatest communicator and the first communicator. Jesus Christ is a perfect communicator par excellence. And the church has not only an obligation, but a mission to use these media for evangelizing and to meet the youth where they are. That is why the church must own, not only use, but own its own media setup and its own media organs and use them. And not only that, the church has an extra duty to evangelize the media world. Because the people in the media world, you people, think that just everything and anything goes. And we have to come and say, no, there is something called media and morality. There's something here called communication and justice and morality, etc., and ethics. We can't just allow anything go. If you look at Cameroon now with what I call citizen journalism, anybody thinks because he has a phone in hand, he can just snap any picture and flush them onto the social media and put any kind of picture anywhere. There are rules of decency and ethics that must be followed, and that's the role of the church.
Father Tatah Mbuy, time for us now to conclude. Your last word to the fans of 90 Minutes in Africa before we go.
I love them all, and I thank you for having given me this opportunity. I look forward to more opportunities like this with you to air out and help people to understand more. That's my work as a church communicator and as a priest, is to make sure that people know what they should know in terms of what will help them in their life to take them back to where they should go.
Father Tatah Mbuy has published 22 books, and of course you can go online on Google to type the books by Father Tatah Mbuy, and of course you are going to find them and read. So, it's going to be a wonderful time going through the wealth of knowledge which he has published so far. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to watch this edition of the program 90 Minutes in Africa with Reverend Father Humphrey Tatah Mbuy of the Episcopal Commission for Communication of the National Episcopal Conference of Cameroon. The program was produced by Eli and Nolinga. I want to thank you for watching and have a wonderful day in the company of programs on My Media Prime. Bye-bye.